How is it going, everybody? I hope your quarantine is going as good as possible. It is the second day of spring. It is March 20th, 2020. A lot has happened since last Friday's podcast, really. Uh, my campus has been shut down. Campuses all across the United States, across really the globe, have been shut down. Um, Schools are online. Graduation ceremonies have been pushed back and canceled. I know Auraria campus kind of postponed their graduation ceremonies. They're still going to have it eventually, but the University of Colorado completely canceled their graduation ceremony, which is a really big bummer for a lot of students, especially those first generation students. I feel really bad for those first gen. Um, in the sports world, the Broncos cut Joe Flacco. They let Chris Harris Jr. walk to a division rival at that, but they do trade for defensive tackle Jarrell Casey, and they signed offensive lineman Graham Glasgow. Tom Brady goes to the Bucks, and also over the past week, I've kind of had to look into some other topics that don't necessarily involve sports because that's what this podcast is about. It's about sports, and without sports for a week, it has been the longest week, what feels like the longest week of my life. Um, so I'm going to also talk about some of our favorite sports video games because that's what was suggested. Um, so you're sitting in your living room or maybe even your bedroom, or I hope you're not driving anywhere right now. I hope you don't need to go anywhere too pressing at the moment. So you're sitting in your living room listening to this podcast. I'm going to dive into all of that and much more. Um, I'm thankful that you're choosing to listen to this podcast with me today. I'm thankful that when this whole thing is over and we're back to live sporting events and we're back to our everyday jobs and we're back to enjoying each other's company, that we're going to enjoy it so much more because we are confined up in this house right now. This is episode 60 of the Game 7 podcast. I am Isaac Bugarin. Will is not alongside with me today. Obviously, we are working through some technical times where we're not exactly sure how we're going to really move forward with the podcast. I think we decided we do want to move forward and continue to produce content because at the end of the day, that's what's going to help us get through this time is having things to take our mind off of this virus, this coronavirus, and everything else like that. So it is a little different podcast today. It's just me. As you can tell, I'm recording from my bedroom. I don't have a microphone, so it's literally just my headphones. So work with me a little bit. I know it may sound a little different than usual because obviously we don't have a soundproof studio. We don't have these $1,000 microphones. We don't have all the equipment that we usually would have to produce a podcast and produce all the content that we usually do. So really work with me, and if this quality content is not necessarily working, then I really don't know what to tell you. I'm open to any suggestions that you may have as far as giving us a better way to produce a podcast or content or whatever it may be that you prefer to listen to this on. I'm pretty much open to anything, any ideas that any listeners may have. You can follow us on Twitter at _Game7. You can follow me at Isaac _Bugarin. You can follow Will at Will _Statler on Twitter. That's where we do a lot of content there. We post a lot on Facebook, Game 7 Show. YouTube is where we try to post the full-length video versions of this podcast. I'm hoping I can get this uploaded to YouTube. That is Game 7 Show. And as always, I'm going to make some takes today. And if you don't like my takes, you can email us, game7show@gmail.com. Or like I said, you could tweet me at Isaac _Bugarin. If you have my phone number, text me. Yeah, go ahead. I love talking about sports. And without sports right now, it's kind of been a rough week, to be honest. So, like I said to start this podcast, the Broncos let Chris Harris Jr. walk to the Los Angeles Chargers, a division rival. Chris Harris Jr. was the final member of the no-fly zone secondary, that Super Bowl 50 championship team. He's the final member of the no-fly zone secondary to move on from the club. Moves on to the Chargers. It's 2 years, 20.5 million. I'm not exactly sure how much of that is guaranteed, but I want to say that when last offseason, the Broncos made an offer to extend Chris Harris Jr. for 2 years, 24 million, and I believe 12 million of that was guaranteed. So it's really interesting to see like Chris Harris Jr. basically bet on himself, and I'd say he lost his own bet. He really struggled, I guess, towards the latter half of the NFL season last year, and I know he got moved out of the slot a couple times and got burned here and there. Um, he still believes he's the best slot corner in the league, which I mean, by all means, he entitled to his own opinion, But I think NFL executives disagree with that as far as this contract that he ended up settling for with the Los Angeles Chargers. Um, Now, I don't think the Broncos are a worse team because Chris Harris Jr. is gone and AJ Bouye is here. But with that being said, I'm going to say that Chris Harris Jr. was an exceptional player, probably more than exceptional. I don't think that even covers exactly what it is that he is. Chris Harris Jr. is going to be in the Broncos Ring of Fame. I think that's pretty much a given. We can all assume that Chris Harris Jr. is going to be in the Ring of Fame. Played at least 15 games in 8 of his 9 seasons in Denver. Denver was ranked among the league's top 5 in pass defense in 2015, 2016, and 2017. Right? This Broncos defense that he was on led the league in almost every major category into that 2015 Super Bowl 50 roster, including pass defense. He spent 9 years here. He's a class act. He's a dude that was very involved in the community, very involved on the football field, and I think he was loved in that locker room. And so, as a Broncos fan, it kind of hurts to see him go. But at the same time, we have to recognize that NFL is a business, all right? And if you can get the same production out of a cornerback that's 3 years younger for maybe the same price or even a little bit less, they're going to go with the younger guy and less expensive. It's a business. In Denver, Chris Harris Jr. had 20 interceptions, 86 passes defensed, 6 forced fumbles, and 4.5 sacks. He even got the chance to rush the passer a little bit there. But like I said, I don't think the Broncos are worse because of Chris Harris Jr. leaving and AJ Bouye coming to Denver. I'm not willing to say that we're a worse team because Harris is leaving, but I'm also not going to say that we're going to be like 10 times better. All right. Chris Harris Jr. was a veteran cornerback. I say veteran, but even though he's 29 years old, but you look at his career, 9 years in the league, all right, playing basically 8 full seasons with Denver, undrafted kid. I don't see why Broncos fans would be upset about Chris Harris Jr. leaving. They shouldn't be upset towards Chris Harris Jr. at that because at the end of the day, it was really the Broncos that kind of said, here's the door. It wasn't necessarily Chris Harris Jr. wanting to leave. Although there were a little bit of tensions, especially last offseason when he didn't get the extension he wanted. The Broncos kind of lowballed him as far as contract negotiating. But again, Chris Harris Jr. wasn't exactly in his prime last season. He's at the age of 29 where, cornerbacks hit this age and they just kind of decline in the NFL. They're not as good. They're not as fast. They're not getting as many interceptions. They're not reading as well. And Chris Harris Jr. hit that age. And I think it was very, very evident last season, especially towards the end, where maybe he just didn't care as much, or he wasn't getting the ball thrown in his way as many times, and he was getting burned. And it seemed like every time down the field, if there was a scoring play, Chris Harris Jr. at some point in that drive got burned. That's just what it seemed like, coming from a Broncos fan. So he's not the Chris Harris Jr. of 2015 where he was a lockdown corner and nobody was catching anything. He was going an entire game without somebody catching a ball. Where if his wide receiver was targeted 5-6 times at most, he's swatting away 4 out of 5 of those, and the other one's going to be a bad throw by the quarterback. He's not the 26-year-old cornerback that he was then. All right, He's a damn good cornerback. All right, the reason why he's in the NFL, the reason why he's getting paid $12 million this year by the Los Angeles Chargers, at least 24 for the next 2 years. But at the end of the day, I don't think we're a worse team. AJ Buye is a young cornerback ready to come in, get his feet wet, ready to make a difference in this Broncos offense or Broncos defense. Excuse me. Um, I don't see the big drop off in comparing Chris Harris Jr. and AJ Buye. I don't really see it. You want to talk about a big difference? The Broncos just got Joe Flacco. Right, that was news yesterday. Big difference in Joe Flacco and Drew Lock. I think it's pretty safe to assume by everybody that Drew Lock is the quarterback of this Broncos team moving forward. It would be foolish of anybody to even think otherwise. For anybody to even think that Joe Flacco was really going to be a part of this Denver Broncos roster this year. They did just sign Jeff Driscoll to be Drew Lock's backup. He's a backup quarterback, veteran backup quarterback, ready, very consistent. That's a good pickup and a lot cheaper than Joe Flacco, obviously, too. Now, he's not the Super Bowl MVP like Joe Flacco was, but at the end of the day, he's cheaper and the NFL is a business. And if Joe Flacco is just going to sit on the bench and he's not going to help Drew Lock further his career in any way, you shouldn't expect him to be a part of this roster. So that being said, John Elway said a year ago, kind of crazy to talk about, a year ago almost to the day, that Flacco was 34 years old and just hitting his prime. Come on, John. Come on. Now he's cut. I think we all knew John Elway was really blowing smoke up everybody's butt when he said that Joe Flacco was 34 years old and hitting his prime. I was like, come on, man. Flacco was 2-6 in Denver as Denver's starting quarterback. 2019, he threw for 1,800 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, only completing 65% of his passes. Now, I think it's a little different if you see that from a rookie quarterback, because you don't expect a rookie quarterback to come in and be this amazing dude, this amazing, knowing all the coverages that NFL teams are throwing at him, knowing all the blitz coverages, knowing all the packages that defense have set up in. But from a veteran quarterback, Super Bowl MVP, like from Joe Flacco, you expect more. I mean, he scored more than 16 points in 2 of his 8 games that Flacco played in. It's just, you need to be a Broncos quarterback. 1, you got high expectations because you're playing for John Elway. 2, you got even higher expectations because we just had Peyton Manning in here not too long ago, 5 years ago. All right, so you still have pretty high expectations for any quarterback that steps foot in a orange and blue uniform. All right, Joe Flacco had 2 years remaining on his contract. The Broncos and Joe Flacco renegotiated it last August to give themselves like an additional salary cap room. So with cap charges of $23 million in 2020 and $27 million in 2021, so that saves them $10 million against the cap this year. But again, this shouldn't be news to anybody. I think we all kind of saw this one coming. He didn't pass his physical because he's hurt his neck, took a pounding in that Indianapolis Colts game earlier this season, or last season, excuse me. He sacked 26 times in 8 games. Now, I don't know if that's a reflection of the offensive line or if it's a reflection of Joe Flacco just not understanding or not reading blitz coverages the way he should. But he took a pound 26 times. Like I said, his release was expected, especially after the Broncos agreed to terms with Jeff Driscoll to be Drew Lock's backup. Drew Lock went 4-1 in his last 5 games. I think that's pretty important to note that obviously we all know that Drew Lock is going to be the quarterback of this Denver Broncos franchise for the foreseeable future. It'd be foolish otherwise for anybody to think so. Excuse me. The Broncos also made a trade. John Elway made a trade for defensive tackle Jarrell Casey. Broncos are going to send a 7th-round pick to the Titans in exchange for Jarrell Casey. And this is a move by the Titans that I think it was hard for the fan base to understand, to get a hold of, but I don't think the Titans were really holding on to Casey that tightly. He had just signed a massive extension back in 2017 for like a 4-year, $60 million. So that's something that the Broncos have to pick up. But because it's a 4-year, $60 million extension that he signed in 2017, the Broncos have to pick up that price. All right, and that's why they're only giving up a 7th-round pick, is because the Broncos are picking up pretty much all of this contract. I say pretty much, but it is all of this contract. And when news first broke of this trade, I looked at Jurrell Casey's Twitter and just kind of see, like, who is he? What is he about? He was loved in Tennessee. He was very much loved. Twitter reactions were very sad from Titans fans. They all said it's just their favorite jersey, that number 99, Casey, in the 2 shades of blue. It was very, very much an emotional attachment for a lot of these Tennessee Titans fans that love Jurrell. This deal for Jurrell Casey comes 2 weeks after the Broncos traded for A.J. Bouye from the Jaguars. We gave a 4th-round pick for that, so seeing Jurrell Casey go for a 7th-round pick and the Broncos eating all of this salary is definitely reasonable, I would say. He's been a durable, productive, dominant player in 9 seasons in Tennessee. Started 14 games each season, been selected to the Pro Bowl the past 5 years. 5 sacks in each of the past 7 seasons. This dude is a beast. He's a durable player. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get at least 5 sacks from this year. He's going to get 14 games. He missed 2 games or this past season for I think he was sore, and the Titans kind of were trying to rotate some people into their lineup or into their defense a little bit more this year. But still, 5 sacks in each of the past 7 seasons. You know what you're going to get. He's a durable, consistent tackle that this defense is going to see a lot of improvement. This entire defense, I think you're going to see is a lot better in 2020-2021 season. All right. I want to go back to the divisional round where the Titans upset the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson. MVP Lamar Jackson. Casey had 2 sacks in that victory. All right. 2 sacks. He got to Lamar Jackson twice, and that's a mobile quarterback. Dude that was obviously tearing up the entire league, and for him to get 2 sacks in a single game in the playoffs, in a divisional round game, that's huge. All right. Jurrell Casey shows up for these big-time games. All right, but like I said, Casey comes at a hefty price. Broncos have to pick up all of this 4-year, $60 million extension that he signed back in 2017. So he's a hefty addition to the Broncos, but it's likely one of the reasons that the Broncos were able to secure such a productive player for a 3rd-day NFL draft pick. All right. Overall, Jurrell Casey is a solid move for this Denver Broncos defense. I cannot be mad for this. I cannot be mad at the Broncos for sending a 7th-round pick to the Titans for Jurrell Casey. You can't be mad. He's a productive, consistent player. Again, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get at least 5 sacks. And you're going to get a lot of pass cover, or a lot of pass rush. All right. Next thing that I want to talk about was the Broncos signing Graham Glasgow. Graham Glasgow is a 4-year, $44 million contract with 26 of that guaranteed. Doesn't turn 28 until the summer. He really formally played for the Detroit Lions. He established himself as a consistent starter in the middle of Detroit's offensive line in 4 years with the Lions. He was drafted in the third round of the 2016 draft, became a starter at guard in week 6 of his rookie season. He became a starter, and that was for Matt Stafford. And that was a really good Matt Stafford at the time. He rarely left the lineup. He rarely left the field since. So he played left guard, right guard, and center for the Lions. Played every single snap on the offensive line in 2017 and 2018. This dude is, again, just like I said about Casey. He's durable. He's consistent. You know what you're gonna get. The dude doesn't leave the lineup. Knock on wood a little bit. Past season, he only played 81% of the snaps. He missed the Lions' loss at Oakland with a back injury, and then Detroit decided to rotate him out of games when they had its top 3 guards healthy, and really to get Kenny Wiggins some more time on that Detroit Lions offensive line. So really, that's why he only played 81% of snaps in 2019. But before that, 2017, 2018, played every snap. All right. Played for Mike Munchak. Mike Munchak had a strong voice in the team's evaluation of available linemen. All right, so he's going to join this Munchak offensive line. Uh, he targeted Graham really because of his versatility. Like I said, he played left guard, right guard, and center for the Lions. Plays every snap 2017, 2018. All right, this dude's still on the come up. This dude's still an ascending player. Just because he's 4 years into the league does not mean that he's just plateaued. All right, this dude's still going up. Graham Glasgow for 4 years, 44 million, 26 million guaranteed is a solid pickup. All right. Overall takeaways, I'm going to say this is a good move. Overall takeaways, I'm going to say this is a really good move for the Broncos and for Graham Glasgow. I think Glasgow expected a little more respect from the Lions, and that's why he tested free agency. He expected a contract negotiation last summer from the Detroit Lions. They didn't really bring anything to the table, and so instead he was like, well, I'd be stupid not to test free agency, right? Be stupid not to test free agency at that point and test to see what his value is, and saw his value at 4 years, 44 million, 26 million guaranteed. That's 11 million a year for Graham Glasgow, a guy that can play left guard, right guard, center. A guy he's going to be on the opposite side of um, who's the guy? Dalton Risner. Escaped my mind there for a second. Going to be on the opposite side of Dalton Risner. Again, this is Graham Glasgow is a very solid pickup. All right, so where do the Broncos stand now is what I want to talk about. The trades for Casey and Bouye, the signings of Graham Glasgow, Jeff Driscoll, that's been pretty much the bulk of the Broncos' work this offseason. All right. Yeah, Justin Simmons was franchise tagged, and Chris Harris Jr. walked. They let him walk. But that's been the bulk of this Broncos offseason, which is solid. All right, like I said, I think this defense is going to be solid in 2020. With the two trades, the Broncos are scheduled to have 10 picks in the draft, and I believe 5 of them are in the first 4 rounds. I believe is my understanding, something like that. So this is a huge draft for John Elway. I've said it before. John Elway is getting a lot better at drafting. You look at his past couple drafts where he picks up, like I said, Drew Lock, Dalton Risner. It's a great pickup. Picks up Cortland Sutton. Picks up Bradley Chubb. And then also picks up Philip Lindsay as an undrafted free agent. Listen, or undrafted rookie, excuse me. This is a huge draft for John Elway. You know, I've said before that the Broncos need to target a cornerback. I wouldn't be surprised if they still go after a cornerback in the first round, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see them go after a running back late in the 4th round or 5th round. I wouldn't be surprised unless they can find a way to land another veteran running back to back up Philip Lindsay. I think they need a running back that can really catch out of the backfield. They need a running back that can not only give protection but also work as a check down running back. That's really what Drew Lock is going to need because we know he could air the ball out. We know Drew Lock has a huge arm, and we know Drew Lock likes to hit Cortland Sutton on those long 30, 40-yard passes. But we also need Drew Lock to recognize that there's the ability to hit the check down every once in a while. All right, and that's something that Philip Lindsay doesn't exactly excel at. So for the Denver Broncos to succeed in 2020, they really need a running back that can improve the blocking game and also get passes from the check down. So really look for the Broncos to get a running back late in the draft, but also look for them to take a cornerback early. Wouldn't be surprised to see them take a wide receiver early also to complement Cortland Sutton on the other side of the football field. Also, again, wouldn't be surprised to see them take a lineman at some point, 2nd or 3rd round to try to sneak somebody in there. In other news, on the other side of the world, on the other side of the United States, I guess I should say, Tom Brady signs with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Really interesting to hear that. The day before he signed with the Buccaneers, he reaches out to Robert Kraft and basically says that he's not coming back. Oh, excuse me. Basically says he's not coming back to the Patriots. They had a very good heart-to-heart conversation. I believe Tom Brady told him why he wasn't coming back, and that, again, I think it was my personal opinion. I think it was Bill Belichick not wanting Tom Brady to come back. You know, because I said it before on a previous podcast at some point that I believe the whole situation between Belichick, Brady, and Kraft is a very, very sticky one because Kraft loves Tom Brady like it's like he's his son. Really, he loves him. But I think in the quarterback room in 2017, where you have Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, and Tom Brady all sitting there, Bill Belichick knew that he had some special talent there, and I think he knew that Jimmy Garoppolo was the quarterback of the future. And so that year, when the Indianapolis Colts called and said, "Hey, we need a quarterback to replace Andrew Luck right now. Is Jacoby Brissett available?" And Bill Belichick basically handles all the trades for the Patriots, does everything football operations. Bill Belichick says, "Yep, here you go. Here's Jacoby Brissett. I believe they got a fourth round pick out of Jacoby Brissett." So there's that. And then you look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and you say, "Well, now I have two quarterbacks in Tom Brady and Jimmy Garoppolo." John Lynch, manager of the 49ers, calls Bill Belichick and says, "Hey, what's the asking price on Jimmy Garoppolo?" And I believe my understanding is that Bill Belichick essentially said, Jimmy Garoppolo is not available, but what about we do Tom Brady for a second round pick? And at that point, John Lynch had the opportunity to take either Tom Brady, he is the greatest quarterback of all time, or Jimmy Garoppolo, because Bill Belichick did not want to let go of Jimmy Garoppolo. But as that conversation continued to move forward, the 49ers basically said, "Okay, well, Jimmy Garoppolo is scheduled to be a free agent this summer anyways. Why don't we just wait to go after him then?" And then that's when Belichick said, "Well, you know what? If Garoppolo's gonna leave anyways, I might as well get something for him." So in return, he got a second round pick. John Lynch took Jimmy Garoppolo for a second round pick. Tom Brady remains a Patriot, and now all of a sudden you got Tom Brady and no other quarterbacks really there to fill that hole as soon as they knew Tom Brady was 40 years old and getting ready to leave. So, with that being said, it was a very sticky situation, especially when Tom Brady found out that the Patriots were, Bill Belichick more specifically, shopped him instead of Jimmy Garoppolo to begin. Tom Brady was hurt. It lit a fire under Tom Brady knowing that people think he's done, especially Bill Belichick, the head coach, thought that his playing days were pretty much over. And in that season, he leads Bill Belichick and the Patriots to another Super Bowl. Goes on to play against the Eagles as they lose that Super Bowl to Nick Foles. And then basically, which is a whole other conversation in itself, but that was a whole other conspiracy on if Tom Brady actually blew that game for them on purpose. But then he comes back and wins another Super Bowl against the Rams. So really, the writing for Tom Brady to leave the Buccaneers was on the wall. My understanding is that this is the first time he became a free agent, unrestricted, and he really set himself up for this situation to leave New England. He signed a series of 1-year contracts and extensions, basically to avoid the Patriots from franchise tagging him, because they had the ability to still put the franchise tag on Tom Brady had he not signed extensions. Had he just went into his contract and just finished it, the Patriots would have had the opportunity to franchise tag him, and he didn't want that. He wanted to choose where he was going to play. He wanted to choose exactly what he was going to do. So when Tom Brady this offseason had the chance to look at different teams, he looked at the Los Angeles Chargers, he looked at the Las Vegas Raiders, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I assume he looked at the Indianapolis Colts too. But with the Los Angeles Chargers, really, I don't think it was really too appealing to him. Las Vegas wasn't really too appealing to him. But Tampa Bay had the geographical location advantage for Tom Brady. He playing on the East Coast. He really liked that. Playing in beautiful Florida, beautiful Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay also gave him essentially free reign. They're giving him free reign to do whatever he wants. And Tom Brady is running this Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization right now. He's calling all the shots as far as who are they going to sign, who are they going to cut, who does he want here, and who does he want where. All right. Why didn't the Colts sign Tom Brady? The Colts ended up signing Philip Rivers for it was like $25 million. Why not just go after Tom Brady and say, hey, here's an extra $5 million, because he ends up settling for $30 million from Tampa Bay. Why didn't the Colts just go after Tom Brady and say, hey, here's an extra $5 million, here's $30 million, instead of you get Phillip Rivers for 25. Don't get me wrong. I mean, but just weigh your options here. All right, you got Phillip Rivers as a old quarterback, never won a Super Bowl, very competitive, but then you got Tom Brady, the greatest quarterback of all time, and there's a $5 million difference. It doesn't make a lot of sense in my mind. The only thing I can think of is that the city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana hates Tom Brady. Signing Tom Brady to the Colts would have been a complete disaster. Complete disaster. You look at you know they got the greatest. The Colts fans see it as, listen, I got the greatest quarterback of my generation in Peyton Manning playing for the Colts, but all of a sudden on the other side of the football field there's this evil football team that always seems to get the best of us, that always seems to beat us at home, always seems to beat us on the road, always seems to beat us in New England, and it's quarterbacked by Tom Brady. You kind of see where I'm going here. Tom Brady is like the Darth Vader of Colts football. All right, you just don't like him. Plain and simple. You don't like Tom Brady in Indianapolis. You don't see Tom Brady wearing a Colts uniform, especially after all the hurt that he caused to Indianapolis Colts fans. Simple as that. Right? I heard that there was interest between the Broncos and Tom Brady. Could that have been possible with the Broncos and Tom Brady? Personally, I don't think so. All right. Personally, I don't think so. Um, I think this is just me. I think there could have been a leak from inside Tom Brady's camp that said, hey, let's bring up another team into this conversation and just say that another team is interested and drive up the price for Tom Brady. Let's drive up the price for Tom Brady to make sure he gets that $30 million and um, and ownership of direction of the football team. So I think somebody inside Brady's camp leaked this news to drive up the price, and the Broncos were never really interested because you have Drew Lock. Okay, so Tom Brady wants to play for another 2-3 years at least. He said that before. He wants to play till he's 45. All right. So essentially, if you go after Tom Brady, you got him for 2 years at least. All right. And you have Drew Lock sitting here. Do you want another Peyton Manning, Brock Osweiler situation? Um, although I don't think Drew Lock is a bust like Brock Osweiler was. But still, it's the same situation, the same type of scenario where you have to kind of battle in your head like, do I go with the greatest quarterback of all time and hope that we could be a competitive football team? Or do I hand the reins to Drew Lock and let him really learn and become a better football player by himself, right? And so I don't think the Broncos were ever really interested in Tom Brady. I saw Case Keenum went to Cleveland and to play behind Baker Mayfield. I don't think Case Keenum is competing for the starting job. I think it's another situation where it's just uh, uh, Case Keenum being a veteran backup to Baker Mayfield. I think Case Keenum is going to mentor Baker Mayfield in Cleveland. I think that'll be really, really interesting fit for for Case Keenum and Baker Mayfield to play together on the same football team. I also got asked how the NFL draft is going to take place this this coming month. Um, it's no fans at all. All right, they're holding it in Las Vegas on the water, so I really don't know exactly what they're going to do without anybody in attendance. Um, because I think the whole idea is I don't even think players want to be there. Why would they want to be out in the open? Why would they want to have a risk of catching the coronavirus? You know, my solution is why don't we have all the essential personnel for these NFL teams in their war room, their draft. War room is a draft room, essentially. It's basically where they sit at during the draft and they say, they got all these phone calls, all these scouts saying, hey, look at this player, draft this guy, don't draft this guy. Basically, it's an office, right? So we got 30 offices, 30 war rooms, 30 draft rooms. Why don't we put a camera in each of these draft rooms, mic up essential personnel and the GMs, the owners, or head coaches, um, and let's go team by team and get a look into each team's draft room and let them draft themselves. Right? Can you imagine John Elway in the war room saying, with the seventh pick of the NFL draft, the Denver Broncos are taking blank? Or can you imagine the New England Patriots saying, hey, in the third round of the 2020 NFL draft, we are taking blank, right? Can you imagine Bill Belichick saying that, or any of the owners saying that, or they have special guests come on and do and announce who's drafted? Like if Chauncey Billups went into Denver's draft room and said, "Hey, we're drafting blank out of CU. We're drafting Laviska Chanel out of CU." You know, how cool would that be? You know, or Pat McAfee going back to Indianapolis to do it. You know, I think that would be pretty sweet. Peyton Manning coming to Denver to say, "Hey, with the 20th pick in the NFL draft, the Denver Broncos are selecting." Boom. I think I just fixed the draft by myself right here. I just gave the best solution to fixing the NFL draft. Now, it may take the spotlight away from Roger Goodell, and I think Roger Goodell really likes that spotlight to be on TV, to be on camera, and it takes away from his moment at the NFL draft. But at the end of the day, I think if you want to drive sales and drive viewership, this is a brand new way to increase people to watch the draft. Because you could ask pretty much anybody else, do they watch the draft? Probably not. I mean, maybe you watch the first 10 picks, but in that you're just checking notifications from the NFL app or Bleacher Report or whoever it is that you get your news from, and you're really just checking to see who goes where. You know, it's not an event that unless you get the one of the first three picks, the NFL draft is not something that you gather all of your friends and family for to watch who you're taking. If you have the 27th pick in the first round, who cares who you're taking? Nobody cares, right? You're just gonna look at your phone and say, "Oh, well, we drafted a wide receiver. Cool." You know, nobody really cares. So that's my solution. I said we get a look into each team's draft room and kind of go from there. I think that'd be sweet. You know, if you have another idea, then let me know. You know, I'm anxious to hear it. Yeah, as we get into the latter half of this podcast here, um, I tweeted out, and I guess I posted on Facebook too, uh, ideas to talk about on this podcast, and we had a couple people talk about it and reach out and say, "Hey, you should talk about X, Y, and Z." Um, First one I want to mention is Ronan O'Shea said to talk about all-time great sports video games. First of all, I want to say shout out to you, Ronan. Thanks for listening. Thanks for always watching. Ronan is the guy that actually helped us launch this podcast and give us the opportunity and the platform to get this podcast going. So Ronan, it's great to hear from you. Thank you for your continuous support and really helping us reach all these goals that we have. He said he said take a look at NHL 94, MVP 05. Had to give some love to Sammy Sosa there, who's on the cover. I got a list of some of my all-time great sports video games that I remember playing as a kid. I wasn't born until '98, so I know Ronan said look at NHL '94, but um, as a kid, I had a Super Nintendo, growing up. I know my dad had one too when he was a kid. Um, I think I wish I could get some more clarification from Ronan on this one, but I believe I don't know. He said NHL '94, but I remember playing NHL. It's the only hockey game that I've ever played was NHL Stanley Cup. I did some research on it. It was 1993 that this NHL Stanley Cup game came out on the Nintendo. Um, the first few games in the NHL series, um, and it offers like an entirely different style of play. Had a quasi 3D environment, so you're not just looking down on small players from the top. You know, you're looking at actual players. You know, you also couldn't find some scoring trick that just worked all the time. It's really an overlooked gem, I think, especially on the Nintendo and in the video game world in general. That was the first and probably the only NHL Stanley Cup game that I really remember playing. He said MVP 05. I think this game has to be the most like genuinely loved baseball game by gamers. Although I don't think it had Barry Bonds. If I remember correctly, I don't think it had Barry Bonds. I don't remember who was replaced with Barry Bonds, but I know it was not Barry Bonds because I remember as a kid playing MVP 05. Was it on my PlayStation 2 or 3? I don't think the 3 came out yet. I want to say it was my PlayStation 2. I was 7 years old at the time, but I remember Barry Bonds was not in MVP 05, and I very vividly remember this. Um, Next one of the all-time favorites. I think you have to bring up NFL Blitz. Now, yes, violence in actual football can cause an issue, and I know about CTE and all the dark stuff. I don't think that was well known in the heyday of NFL Blitz. Um, NFL Blitz was like the Grand Theft Auto of sports games, where you could tackle anybody, you were throwing people, hard hitting, helmets were popping off. Like the graphics of the game was pretty cool. Um, Again, in no way am I condoning it in real life. You know, Miles Rudolph and who's the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback that got hit? Or was it Mason Rudolph and Miles Garrett? There you go. I combined their names. It was Mason Rudolph and Miles Garrett. Um, Not condoning that in real life, but to throw guys and drop elbows on them after the whistle and stuff, that was pretty cool. NFL Blitz, crazy, absurd, and that's what makes it so good and such a fun game to remember and look back on. NBA Jam, you guys remember that? Not the most realistic sports game, but it was perhaps the most beloved. It was 2-on-2 basketball game, basically like an arcade staple. You know, it was really the best way to explain NBA Jam. Full iconic video game elements. Players were catching fire. Announcer was saying, "He's on fire." You know, flames light up on all the people's hands. The ball lights up. The chain link nets light up. It was pretty cool. Yeah, NBA Jam, definitely a good one. All of the NCAA baseball, football games were always pretty sweet, but we support college athletes and their likeness being compensated, so I'm not really going to talk too much about that. Um, Backyard Baseball, you guys remember Backyard Baseball? That was a really good game too. It's basically like the Sandlot for video games. It also had the kid versions of MLB players. I mean, I remember Albert Pujols as a kid, and Alex Rodriguez, and Derek Jeter, and Jorge Posada was in that. You know, it was pretty sweet. The Backyard Baseball was a fun game. Um, you know, the original version had like 30 kids to choose from. Pablo Sanchez, Backyard Baseball legend, right there. Pablo Sanchez. All right, we all know that one. Um, does Tony Hawk skateboarding? Does that count as a sports video game? I think that counts as a sports video game. I remember playing Tony Hawk skateboarding as a kid. You know, pretty sure it had a great soundtrack. I remember Ring of Fire by Johnny Cash was on that. You know, so it also lets you like create your own skate park. I thought that was pretty sweet too, coming from a Tony Hawk video game. So with that being said, those are probably some of my favorites, all-time sports video games. I don't want to mention MLB The Show or NBA 2K or Madden. Like those are kind of givens that are around today and keep getting updated. Um, but NHL 94, MVP 05, NFL Blitz, NBA Jam, Backyard Baseball, Tony Hawk. Boom, there you have it. Stephanie Sattler suggested that I talk about bowling and all the ESPN The Ocho stuff. To be completely honest, I've never watched ESPN The Ocho. I don't believe I have. Um, I watched bowling the other day though. I remember I was at work last week and there was bowling on and I was watching and I was like, wow, this is what I had to look forward to without any sports. I really have no clue. Like I understand the general um, game of bowling. I know how to play. I'm a pretty good bowler myself. Not to brag, but I think I'm a decent bowler. Um, but I don't understand like scoring or tournaments or anything too specific like that. Um, Although I assume now I'll be watching a lot of ESPN The Ocho coming up here pretty soon. Donna Setzel, my grandma, wants to know why the millennial generation is not hearing the social distancing order and why the beaches in Florida are packed with 20-year-olds. Hi, Grandma. I hope you're doing well. First of all, I want to tell you that the social distancing and millennials, I don't think they're millennials actually, because millennials are like um, people that are born, I think 93, 94. That's the kind of the cutoff for being a millennial. Um, I think everybody else is between like 95 and to 2001. I think you kind of call them Gen Z. I don't think it's millennials that are going to the beaches and going on vacations. I think it's more this Gen Z crowd, really. Um, and they're going because really us Gen Z kids are kind of stupid to say the least. Um, we see great deals and we're just impulsive, young, stupid kind of kids. You know, uh, we don't necessarily see the full consequences of going to vacation on spring break. We see it as this is something that we had planned all semester and we're going to go regardless. I think that's the way how a lot of these kids are really seeing spring break and this coronavirus is that it's online classes. You get cabin fever from staying inside all day. Um, and when you don't have, like, if you're not sick, like, why not go? If you get it, you'll be fine, they assume. Take the risk. I think that's just how the Generation Z kids see this whole social distancing order. Um, but with all that being said, I want to remind everybody that you can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, at @Game7 Show, YouTube's Game7 Show. You can email me if you didn't like what I said today on today's podcast. Um, Game7Show@gmail.com. That's the email. Rate us on Spotify, Apple Music. What does the future of this podcast look like? I want to figure out how we can get Will on on this podcast. Maybe we'll have to Skype or something. Get some other guests to Skype in. Um, I want to remind everybody, please be safe. Social distance yourself. If you don't have to go anywhere, don't go anywhere. Just be smart. Be a overall good person. Be a better person today. Be a better person tomorrow. Um, Now's a chance that hit up your old friend. Reach out to somebody that you haven't talked to in 3 months or 3 years or 30 years. Say hi to somebody um, because now we're nobody's together. So let's have that camaraderie. Let's have that ability to talk to people now. Take advantage of this opportunity because you never know when the next time is that you're going to see somebody. So really take advantage of every opportunity that we're getting. Take advantage of every day, um, and try to be a positive person today, tomorrow, and moving forward. Um, with that being said, I also want to encourage you to look into supporting small businesses in this time. Small businesses help this world. Small businesses help this economy. Small businesses do a lot more than just um, have a functional website and whatnot. Small businesses have the best customer service. Small businesses have the best workers, the best owners that are down to earth. They care about their customers. It's not just a big corporation looking to make a dollar. This small businesses is what supporting small businesses puts food on the table for a family. It pays for the roof over the head of a family. It's more than just a corporation. It's a small business. All right. When you support small businesses, you are supporting families. You are supporting um, individuals pay their rent for that month. All right. You're doing more than just helping a corporation. Um, when I was an intern with Rebel Promotions, I worked with Kentra Fernandez. Great opportunity that I had working in marketing. I learned a heck of a lot. And really, if you're not supporting small businesses, um, get into it. Really, I encourage you. Go to the post office down the street that works with all the mail. Even then. All right. Go to the little Mexican restaurant on the corner of whatever busy street that you live on. All right. Because at the end of the day, if you're supporting small businesses, you're supporting putting food on the table for that family, um, putting a roof over the head for that family. You're not just another customer to a big corporation. You are a priority to these small businesses. And lastly, to end this podcast, is if you're on the fence about adopting a dog, if you're stuck at home due to the coronavirus, try fostering. All right. Reach out to a shelter, see how you can help. Um, if you're looking for a pet, go to the shelter first. As always, Again, I know this quality of this podcast was not the best. I don't have any grade A microphones or an entire studio like I used to have on campus. So work with me here. If you have any ideas, let me know. So as always, if you're looking for a dog, reach out to a shelter. Go to a shelter first, and we will see you guys next time. Hopefully next week sometime. Thanks.